أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذي أذهب الله عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي أفوض أمري إلى الله بصير بالعباد سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome into our continuing journey in understanding the verse of the throne. Ayatul Kursi is a very important part of our daily lives. It is a verse that we use a lot, and we use it a lot of times with this intention of protection. And we have been going deeper into this verse. And yesterday somebody we were doing this live session with Marzia Hassan, and she said something really beautiful that Ayatul Kursi is like the resume of God, which was very interesting because I've never heard that before, and God bless her for sharing these insights with us. So the idea of going into Quran and diving deep into it has got nothing to do with a sense of making sure that we are safe in the hereafter, in that sense, which is usually the case, right? We look into Quran, we try to do good deeds because we want to feel safe. Now, this understanding of feeling safe is something which, like I said, we use Ayatul Kursi for as well. However, in my understanding, this is what I wanted to say, in my understanding, we should not be, or we do not need to be doing whatever we do, all the good deeds or Ayatul Kursi and all of that to feel safe. However, because feeling safe is a certain intention, there's an intention there, I want to feel safe. So, it's very interesting because in Pakistan, when situation gets bad in the city and, there are a lot of robberies or there are thugs on the road, we've experienced a lot of acts of violence. So, some people will start keeping a lot of security guards, but a lot of people will say, well, we pray Ayatul Kursi for our protection. And so this need for safety, this need to get rid of this fear that somehow I am not safe, drives us to do a lot of things. And Ayatul Kursi is one of them, right? And we were discussing yesterday that religion came to free us. It came to take us out of the shackles of the one thing that puts us into chains, and that is fear. Because a person who is fearful is a person who is chained, is a person who is unable to reach his or her highest potential. And when we are caught in the claws of fear, then we lose sight of our purpose, we lose sight of our true intention. And the idea of getting rid of fears is the idea of a fulfilled life, is the idea of an actualized human being who is now able to come out of a state of contraction, come out of a state of just surviving, and then saying, okay, what is my true purpose, right? Because fear was the state of the human soul when human beings, when we started out, we were living in the caves, we had wild life attacking us, we had to protect ourselves from food that might have been poisonous. So there was this intrinsic need to feel safe. And moving on now, today, again, we have different things that we fear. And I remember that, there was a time when one of my teachers would say that the last century, the 1900s, that was the century of a revolution in technology. So we saw, before that, we started out with industrial revolution, and then we went into technological evolution, and we grew a lot in that sphere. But then my teacher said that the next era is going to be the evolution or the era of psychological development. So we're seeing today that in this era, while we're seeing a lot of psychological growth in the sector, where we're seeing that a lot of therapists are coming out, a lot of people are studying psychology. Google gives us easy access to reading a lot about the human mind and human way of thinking and all of that. While all of that is happening, we're also seeing that there's a massive use of advertisement industry and marketing, which thrives on human fear. We saw that when COVID came, people were hoarding toilet paper, right? I mean, it became a big thing. And it was very sad to see this evolved mind, this evolved species living on this very, very evolved planet, according to our understanding, evolved, and then resorting to these things of hoarding. So I was actually talking to somebody, and when the inflation happened in our country, and economy is in a really bad shape right now, I started hearing people hoarding. Now, the interesting thing is that I didn't hear the poor people hoarding, but I heard that the rich people are hoarding on luxury products because of the sanctions, and because of the, well, not sanctions, but the change in the policy in the country. A lot of the luxury products are being taxed heavily. So when that news came around, I heard that a lot of rich people were hoarding. And Quran very openly says that hoarding is something that Allah doesn't approve of. We shouldn't do any kind of hoarding. But it's all coming from a place of fear. It's a fear that drives us into taking steps or actions that are ungodly. Why do I say ungodly? Is because somebody who is fearful of lack, of the fact that because of the change in policy, I won't be able to afford something, I won't be able to buy something. It's a fear of lack. It is not it's not a thought of abundance. And so that thought of lack is driving us to take away something from another person, because we don't want to feel left out. We don't want to be the one who loses out. And so there's a very material, very horizontal, very earthly cause and effect sense of feel of the way reality works, that I'm going to lose out because things are getting bad. But what does faith look like in all of this is when we can cut ourselves from the cause, and we can cut ourselves away from the idea of this horizontal cause and effect. So that what I mean by that is that if there is inflation, if there is a bad situation in the country, I'm going to be the one who's going to be losing out. I'm going to be the one who's going to pay for it. You don't know what future holds, so you only rely on ideas of fear that things are just going to go south, everything's going to go bad. And that is not husn billah. That is not having a good opinion of God. That is having a bad opinion of future, not having hope in good things. So one can argue that we're just being careful, we're just planning. But what we want to see is that, are we planning from a place of faith, or are we planning from a place of fear? Because what the difference between faith and fear is that faith aligns us with our godly connection to the source, but fear aligns us with the dark side within us that then pushes us into doing things which are ungodly. So in Ayatul Kursi, when we see the resume of God, when we see who God is, and we realize that God is the mightiest power, God is the greatest power, He's the one who never sleeps, He's the one who's always watching, then He's also watching our intentions, and He's also watching our actions, and He's also watching when we falter. And in all of this, when Allah is watching us, there's a sense of being supported. There's a sense that there is someone with me who is there to hold me, guide me, take me through my fears, and take me through my insecurities, and help me, because there is something that I need to work on. And if I'm coming from a place of fear, then how do I go to this place of faith? So we see that last time when we talked about intercession, and I said that I wanted to talk about the Holy Prophet, we see that the reason certain people are given the izn of God, certain people are given the permission of God to intercede, to be the role model, to be the one we hang on to be the one we look up to and learn from, is because they didn't crush under the pressure of fear. And I want to look into the life of the Holy Prophet today. And these sessions are more for me than anybody else, because we're all learning, we're all flawed, and we're all human beings with tendencies towards fearing things, and we keep losing that sight of that lesson. We keep losing sight of that vision and understanding of God and faith, and we tend to give up, and we falter, and we fall. So what do these people do? They become our role models, and the most amazing thing about them is that while Allah has put them on a really high station and a place where we're down here and we can look up to them literally, we also see that their lives had all the reasons for them to fear things most, to not feel like they were supported. So if we start with the life of Holy Prophet, we see that he's born without a father. So he's born an orphan. And that in itself is a very painful thing for us to look into, for a child to realize as a child grows. And then we see that just a few years into his life, his mother passes away. So he's a child, and yet he is going through these difficult situations in life that can make a person bitter and feel like they're unsupported, because parents are your first point of reference for support, and he loses both of his parents. And then we see that his grandfather takes over, and his grandfather is the one who is taking care of the Kaaba. He has a lot of say. He's a very important person. Some people say that Hazrat Abdul Muttalib was a very, very special man, because when he prayed at the Kaaba, what we see in Surah Fil, that the birds came and they pelted on the elephants. In Surah Fil, we see that the elephants became like pulp, right? And there was a protection given to the Kaaba. We see that in history, a lot of times the Kaaba was attacked, right? Unfortunately, Kaaba was attacked many times. We see that after Imam Hussein, Yazid also, put his horses there. There was a lot of bloodshed in the Kaaba. So it's not like every single time Kaaba was attacked, the Kaaba was protected. But some people say, and this is just an idea to think about, and it's something that some scholars believe, that there was a special station given to Hazrat Abdul Muttalib as well. Spiritually, he was a very, very, a man at a very high station, because of which, when he prayed, Allah sends this miraculous flock of birds that protects the Kaaba from the elephants. So the Prophet is under this amazing protection of a man who is not just physically strong with a say and politically connected, he's also very spiritual and a faithful man. And then he goes away. So we're seeing that constantly this prophet, our Prophet Muhammad, is being, put in a place of fear. I recently, came across a child in my son's school who lost his grandfather, and we were discussing how the child needs therapy because, there's a traumatic situation that he's going through, and how to make sense of somebody who goes away and never comes back. So with all of that in mind, looking at the life of the Holy Prophet, there was a lot of reason for fears to creep in, okay, and make him bitter and upset and all of that. But the Prophet has a certain character within him that I'm going to bring your attention to in a bit. And then we see, so it's connected to fear, okay? And then we see that the Holy Prophet is under his uncle, Hazrat Abu Talib. And, there's a reason why I'm going step by step with the life of the Holy Prophet. And my intention here is to bring some attention to the life of the Holy Prophet, because we rarely discuss him. We rarely talk about the intricacies and the details of his life and his struggle, and to see the remarkable personality he was, and it is and continues to inspire us, but in a very human way. Because I've talked about this earlier, that a lot of prophets came, and a lot of prophets were given miracles. They were given miracles like magical miracles, very obvious, very out there, like, one is going inside the stomach of the fish. One is, given the interpretation of dreams. Another is, Hazrat Yusuf was given the interpretation of dreams. Hazrat Yunus went in the belly of the whale. Then we see Hazrat Musa being given so many, Yade Beza, the bright hand, his hand used to shine, and when all of these different calamities came on his people, there were frogs that were coming as rain, the river went red like blood, and then, he parted the sea. So they were very visual, very open out there miracles. But then the life of the Holy Prophet, how do we understand the miracle of the Holy Prophet when we don't see such miracles in his life? And recently, a lot of scholars have talked about, some miracles attached to the Holy Prophet, like the breaking of the moon into half and things like that. And there is a lot of research still going on in the authentication of these ahadiths. So, while all of that is going on, what was it truly remarkable about the Holy Prophet was his humanness that was so what should I say, remarkable and par excellence, that was transmuting the dark into light. And that is the miracle of the Holy Prophet, that he became the Rahmatul lil Alameen, the mercy for all mankind. And what we want to see through him is the alchemy of the soul, of how the true miracle was in the everyday mundane, but which was not really mundane. It was the true miracle. And so when we see the life of the Holy Prophet, going back to his uncle, he loses his uncle and his wife who support him in his mission. Now we're seeing that the Holy Prophet is very different from the rest of the people. So extraordinary people are made out of extraordinary circumstances. And that is something to ponder on, because this world is a furnace. It's a place where you are polished and you are, made ready for an for a transformation, for constant evolution, for growth, for human actualization and perfection. So in this furnace, extraordinary situations can lead to extraordinary human beings. And extraordinary situations don't look extraordinary on the outside, but they are extraordinary for the person experiencing those moments. And therefore, there is no comparison for any situation with another situation of a human being. But what is it that makes these situations extraordinary is that these are situations that can instill us with a lot of fear. And how is that fear going to affect us so that this doesn't make us bitter, negative, dark, and evil, but transmutes us into light? And a lot of us humans, when we go through these circumstances which put pressure on us, we break. We break under pressure. We resort to things we don't want to resort to things. Some people smoke up, some people drink, some people go into drugs, some people go into sex. I mean, a lot of these things happen, but every person's level of breakdown will be different. They say that a saint's, a sinner's good deed might be a saint's sin. A sinner's good deed might be a saint's sin, meaning that for the saint to be at a very high level and to falter from that level and come down even a little bit can be that saint's sin, while a sinner who's been indulging in a lot of negative habits can improve and come to a slightly better level, and that can be a great achievement for that person. So we fall in our own different ways. We all have our own points of breaking, and we come from our points of breaking in humbling ourselves and understanding I can break under pressure. And then we see the Holy Prophet, that he's continuously transmuting these dark moments of fear, where fear could have overtaken him. We see him in the Battle of Badr. We see that Allah is saying that, we made you feel like, they were a lot, but they were less. And we made them think that you were a lot, and then we sent angels to help you. So in situations like these, we're seeing that, even Holy Prophet ﷺ is expressing his fear to God. He is saying, God, I need your help. I need your mercy. I'm scared. I don't know how to battle this. And so his life becomes an example for us to see that while this man was strong, going through one tribulation after another, we have narrations of him receiving the revelation. And, our brothers, they have a slightly different interpretation of how the revelation came, and the feeling that the Holy Prophet felt at the time of receiving the revelation. And another story says, no, he didn't go through all of that. But if we do honestly look at even that situation of the Holy Prophet, where some people say that he was, very shaken and he was shaking and all of that, it aligns with the human experience. It aligns with the human experience of experiencing something completely different and new, which can fill you with anxiety and fear on a human level. And we see in the Quran again and again that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is guiding the Holy Prophet. In Surah Duha, when there's a gap in the revelations not coming to the Holy Prophet, Allah is calming him and supporting him and encouraging him and saying, what, don't worry. This is just a gap. We are not upset with you. because, the Prophet was feeling abandoned and feeling like, okay, I've done something because of which I'm not worthy of receiving the revelations anymore. Now, these are very human ways of looking at the life of the Holy Prophet that give us a very humanistic understanding that here is a man who is fighting his inner jihad of battling fear at every stage. And anxiety and fear are part of this inner jihad. Anxiety and fear are part of this jihadun nafs. So in jihadun nafs, while we see the Holy Prophet at that really high level, we are not at that level. We fall under the slightest of pressure, but the Holy Prophet did it. But he has to be a role model for us. And he cannot be a role model for us if we take away from his journey the struggle, the realness of battling fear and darkness and anxiety. Because if I say that no, the Holy Prophet never feared, never felt anxiety, never felt any darkness, never felt hopeless, but then there was some magical, inspiration in him to just stay faithful and hopeful, and there was a direct infusion into him of this ismat that we talk about, because of which, he never experienced anxiety, never experienced darkness and fear. Then what we're doing really is we're taking away from the true role modeling that he did. How is it possible that if religion is coming to teach us jihadul nafs, and jihadul nafs is jihadul akbar, and Rasulullah said to these Sahaba who were coming back from a battle, and they said, you fought bravely and you did this big battle. It's a very famous saying of the Prophet, and it's associated with a particular battle, and I can't recall that right now. And they said, yes, it was this difficult battle that we fought, and the Holy Prophet said, yeah, you did really good, but do you know what is the greatest battle? What is the greatest battle? And sometimes we hear that, he says that fighting against your nafs, sometimes he talks about anger, and sometimes we see in different occasions he picks on certain aspects of the darkness of the nafs, and then he says getting over that is a greater jihad. That is jihadul akbar. To put it easily, the greatest jihad is the jihad that we fight within. So how is it that the commander-in-chief doesn't battle the true enemy and doesn't emulate to us how it is fought, how the battle is fought? How can the commander-in-chief be in a position to tell the subordinates this is how the battle is fought when he never goes down into the battlefield and doesn't face the true demons and the true enemies himself? So it wasn't like the Aimma and the Prophet and the Imams, were not fighting a real battle. It's just that, like I said, the sin of the saint is a good deed of the sinner. It was so high, its level, it was so high up there that we can never, can never imagine reaching that level. But they would want us to aspire. They would want us to aspire to reach very, very, very high levels of spirituality, of inner jihad, of inner battling, of reaching lofty stations. So this idea of fear is an intrinsic part of the human journey, and it is the intrinsic part of alchemy of the soul, because in order for the soul to alchemize to its perfection, for it to go from its dark, poisoned states of dis-ease within us and to reach levels of loftiness and gold. This is why I'm using the word alchemy, because Ibn Arabi and great mystics, they talk about alchemy as the science through which lead is turned into gold. And this is what the Holy Prophet has shown us through role modeling, that imagine if your teacher comes and says, okay, I'm going to teach you the art of alchemy, but he has no lead, he has no poison, he has no lower materials, and he's just gold. There's just gold. He has only gold. What is he going to change into gold? How is he going to teach us what is turned into gold? So to think that the Holy Prophet was just gold and he just showed us gold but didn't teach us how it's done would be a disservice to his journey, would be a disservice to the journey of the Imams and all of them, because there is a real journey here. You know, when I was talking about last time also, that when we hear the dialogues and the conversations of Imams with God, and we hear words from Imam Zainul Abidin that, you know, God, I keep faltering because you're so merciful. It allows me to be human. It allows me, it gives me that space to experience life fully in all its dark and light. So I come to you because I know that you are going to hold me and carry me through this. That is why he is praying. You know, the kind of tragedy, the kind of trauma and pain Imam Zainul Abidin went through the tragedy of Karbala. I mean, if in today's world, I mean, I'm going to be very frank here, in today's world, somebody who goes through a battle and comes out alive, the one thing we see in movies, the one thing we see that these soldiers come back and say, they have this, I don't know what they call this, the symptoms. They call it this thing where you feel guilty for being alive. Why was I left alive? You know, and there's a guilt about it. And then there is therapy for it. And then you need therapy to understand, oh, you know, day when I got left, I got to live longer, right? And some people may argue that, oh, but he was the Imam and he had the knowledge and he had this connection with God and he had Tawheed. But with my own humble understanding, I feel that what Imam Zainul Abidin did, this is where I wanted to bring everybody. Yes, post-traumatic disorder, yes, PTSD. I understand, but you know, there's so many different kinds of post-traumatic disorders. There's so many different kinds of PTSD, right? And one of them is what I was mentioning, that when you're left alive and everybody dies, it's like all the soldiers got the honor of being a martyr, but I didn't, you know, or all of them suffered, but I got to live. I mean, very simply speaking, when COVID hit, I went to somebody's home where two people got COVID in one family and they were living together. One person died of COVID. And when I met the other person, you know, I was giving my condolences and she just turned around and she said, you know, the biggest, heaviest thing on my chest is, you know, he went, but I got to live. And I'm just trying to come to, you know, come to terms with that. And to us, I mean, to a lot of us, it might sound like, what kind of a thinking is that? But it is part of the human journey. That is why a lot of us, I mean, living in this country where the minute you walk out of the house, there are beggars, there are people who are in very bad condition. There's a visual impact of poverty. You feel guilty, you know, why God, I wasn't that and I'm this, you know, that you feel guilty. You don't want to sit in your nice car. You don't feel like wearing nice clothes because you're seeing all these people sick and poor outside and you wonder, like, what did I do to deserve this? What did I do to deserve this, you know? And the idea is not to jump to this logical conclusion and saying, oh, you deserve it because God willed it, or you did deserve it because there's a test here, world is a place of test. The idea is to walk through these emotions that these situations evoke within us. And so when we look at the life of Imam Zainul Abidin, we see that he alchemized his pain. He alchemized his pain, which is very different from saying he never felt the pain. You see? So you feel the pain because you're still in a human body. You feel the pain, you live through the pain. It is it kills you, that pain, but you're still living. And that is a tougher journey, because the person who had to die and go has gone. They did their bit, they went through their bit, and they're gone now. So a lot of people would say that the journey becomes tougher for the survivors, because they have to live through the pain of bereavement. We don't know what happens on the other side. But as long as we can experience life on this earth, we know that life becomes difficult for the one who survives the person who's gone. And that is very, very painful, to mourn for 72 people from your family. I mean, imagine the burden and the heaviness, right? So he alchemized his pain. It didn't mean that he didn't feel the pain. And that's why we cry, right? I mean, that is why we have this tradition of crying for Imam Zainul and his family, and we mourn, because there is a very real human pain here. But we cannot go into that extreme of completely ignoring the alchemy part. Because if we just drown ourselves in the pain and the pain and the pain and the pain, then again we lose the plot. But I want to focus right now on the idea that Imam Ali, he went through a real pain. The Prophet, he went through real pain of losing his loved ones. So we see now that, when he loses Bibi Khadija and Hazrat Abu Talib, now we see that he is mourning for a whole year. Amul Huzn, the year of mourning. He is crying for a whole year. What that's showing us is that you need time to sit with your pain. And pain alchemizes us. It gives us something that needs to be changed and transformed. And when that pain comes into our life, then it has to be accepted as what it is. We can't jump or bypass it. So alchemy of pain is something that changes us. Using that pain, not becoming bitter through that pain, not ignoring that pain, not blaming the cause of that pain on XYZ people, but to take that pain and then really, really own it and sit with it and say, this is my pain. And pain is very, very fearful. It's a very fearful thing. When we were talking yesterday, the first thing we spoke about is human fitrat, human nature. And our nature is that we run away from pain and we run towards pleasure. And that's why a lot of us today are drowned in different techniques to run away from our pain and drown ourselves in any kind of pleasure so that we can numb that pain. But when we do that, we lose out on the biggest opportunity of transformation, transforming our soul, the process of alchemy. And when I said that this era is the era of psychological development, this is what I mean. Psychological development, spiritual development are so interconnected, because we associate psychological work with ideas of fear that lead to disorders or mental health crisis, where we have anxiety, we have panic, we have schizophrenia, we have phobias, we have all of these situations on a spectrum from mild to severe and intense, right? It's all stemming from a place of fear. And this is psychological work. And in faith, in the work of faith, in religion, in spirituality, everything is about overcoming fear and overcoming our demons of darkness and hopelessness, depression, and then coming into a place of faith. So it's all really interconnected. It's all coming together in this life where we want to numb our pain through people use our fear because we don't want to look at our pain. the advertisement industry is thriving on this idea that we don't want to look at our pain. So it's promoting everything that can give us pleasure. So we indulge in pleasure so that we don't have to look at our pain. We indulge in pleasure so we don't have to be companions of our pain, to sit with our pain. I don't want to sit with my pain. I don't want to befriend my pain. I don't have time for my pain. I would just want to put it away somewhere and pretend like it doesn't exist. And that's when the breakdown starts to happen, because the conditions within the human soul, within the human mind, start to worsen and turn into phobias and OCDs and all of that, because we're not nipping it in the bud. And we need to understand that this idea of fear is, while it is something that contracts us, it is the way. They say the only way out is through. The only way out is through. The only way out of fear is walking through the fear. There is no other fear. There is no other way. And that is the alchemy of the whole human soul and the human mind, where we have to look at our pain, we have to look at our insecurities, we have to look at our anxieties, and then become friends with it, and then alchemize it. So Imam Zainul Abidin comes back with all of this PTSD and all of this pain and all of this, trauma, and it's real. And then he starts to recite du'as, starts to talk to God. And his conversations with God are phenomenal. And in that verbalization, there is an alchemy of pain. The pain transmutes and we experience it. Those of us who have read the Psalms of Islam, it has English translation, or Sahifa Kamila, and we know the kind of effect his words have on the soul, on the pain that we're experiencing. And that's what he did. He alchemized his pain. We see Imam Ali, he went through his share of pain. We see the Prophet, he goes through his share of pain with the bereavements, with the people he loses. And then, he spends a whole year in sitting with that pain. And then after that, we see that, he goes on with his journey. He's, he's protecting, he's defending Islam, spreading the word of God. He goes through his painful situations, even within his family. There are discords within his family with the wives. All of these painful situations come up. But we see that the reason they are mentioned, the reason these struggles of the Prophet are mentioned in the Quran, that, you were an orphan, but we protected you and we guided you, don't fear that, that we have left you in Surah Duha, this is just a break. Or in Surah Muzammil, Allah is saying, you're standing all night, give yourself rest. Then we see again and again that Allah is reminding the Prophet, you're just a messenger. Don't worry for these people. Your job is not to change them. Your job is just to give the message. Why do we see Allah constantly coming in and talking to the Holy Prophet like he's a human being feeling real feelings? Is because other than that, the journey of the Prophet would not make sense, because he lived a very human journey of fear and anxiety at every stage. His was a very lofty journey compared to all of us. Yes, absolutely. Nevertheless, he went through a very human journey of experiencing these emotions, these pains, these anxieties, these insecurities. And then we see Allah giving him the reassurance. And constantly we see that Allah does that with his prophets. We see Bibi Maryam, I mean, that line from the words of Bibi Maryam, where she's about to give birth to Hazrat Isa and she says, I wish I were dead. Yeah, I mean, really honestly looking at it, those words are they sound very suicidal, like I wish I were dead, you know? And we're seeing that human real state within her. And Allah is calling her Sayyidatun Nisa'il Alami in the Quran, right? In Surah Al Imran, verse 42, she is being put at a pedestal of women. Nobody is given that position in the Quran. Quran speaks of Bibi Maryam like that, and yet that very woman is saying this. So we can imagine the human state of this saintly woman, and that is why their examples are in the Quran. That is why they become a means of shifa'at for us, because they went through a very, very real human journey of real human fear, of real human pain, but they alchemize that pain. They use their pain and they grow through it. So when we are hurt, now this is the part where it's a practical thing for all of us in day-to-day life. When a trigger comes and when hurt comes, and I mean, this is something I was stuck in, and I just realized it last week. It was an insight that I've been working in meditation and breathing and mindfulness and all of that for such a long time. And somewhere there was this vision for myself that one day people will say something hurtful. I will go through a painful situation, but you know what? I'll be in a state of Zen and it won't affect me. And I won't feel anything, right? I will be like, oh, I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you. I don't feel a thing. You can be like whoever you want to be. And I will be just totally cool about it, right? There's this vision. We also feel like, oh, I'll have the perfect wisdom at the perfect time. We also feel like, when hurtful situations come, and a lot of people will ask me this question. They're like, if I'm not supposed to feel the hurt, and if I'm supposed to be grateful to God, and if life is supposed to be like, this place where bad things happen, but you're totally calm about it, and if I don't feel the pain of the situation and I go, so apparently Zen means that I don't feel pain and I don't feel the hurt, then how do I stay human? Like, then I'll go numb. So for example, this is a stage that I also went through, that there's a part of us that becomes very, 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 very sensitive to pain. And you become an empath to the level where you start absorbing everybody else's pain. So it becomes very, very difficult to listen to other people tell their painful story, because you almost feel it in your body. You almost feel like you're living their life. So you go into a state of real pain, like a contracted state of pain, because you are empathizing with this other person's energy so much. And then when you want to break away from it, you come into a state where you say, you know what, I'm not going to feel this level of hurt, so I'm going to put a barrier. And then you try to numb it, numb yourself so you don't feel that pain. And then you talk to the person and you realize that a part of you acts like it's dead. It doesn't feel it, it's not feeling. So you'll see a lot of people who will be coming for condolences, or people who will be talking to you about your pain, or people who even are counseling you at times, but they sound very cold. You feel like there's a wall. You feel very cold with them, they're saying that they're there to support you, but you feel this lack of connection. You feel cold, and they don't talk like they're really, really feeling humans. They're not soft, and you can't get through to them. It's because a lot of these people, they're extremely empathetic. So they feel so much that they have to put a wall. And when they put a wall, it's like a very artificial wall. So they're deflecting all the emotions because they don't want to absorb it. And so for a while, you experience these people who used to be extremely feeling people, kind people, and feeling people who would be crying with you when you're crying, and they suddenly go cold because they can't take that pain, and they're training themselves to, kind of cut off from feeling so much. And the reason I'm sharing these states and the reason we're discussing these human states is because becoming that kind of empathetic person who starts to absorb everybody's energy, or becoming the person who cuts off and becomes cold and then starts to act in a very robotic manner with people, they're both two extremes. And we juggle between these two states. We try to find that balance. And the balance comes when we come to a place of saying, I cannot completely immerse myself into this pain and just make this into this pain which is so deep that I feel like a victim. And at the same time, I cannot run away from this pain. It is there. It's there. I cannot close my eyes and run away from it. But the only way out is through it. To accept it, to accept the fears, accept the hurt, to know that this is the reality of life. The hurt will be there, the pain will be there. It will keep coming in different waves, different, they come like waves coming and going. Waves of the ocean, they come and go, come and go. There's an ebb and flow. So pain and hurt will come and go. And then it will slowly, slowly mature, create a emotional maturity in us, where Zen, according to my insight, according to my understanding, I have not reached any place at all. I mean, if anything, I feel like I'm in deficit in this journey. May Allah guide us. May Allah take us to a lofty station, but we're far, 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 far from it. With all of my weaknesses and my lack of knowledge and my, flawed humanness that I have, what I feel that the journey is about is that Zen does not mean that we will not feel hurt when somebody passes a vitriolic comment, something acidic, something vindictive. When a loved one shames us, when a loved one guilt trips us, when a loved one does something to hurt our trust, betrays us, the pain is not just going to go away because you're in a state of Zen. It's going to be very much there. In fact, I believe that when we become more spiritual and we become more connected, we become more empathetic, we become kinder, we become more compassionate, we become more loving, and we feel even more. Our sensitivity will become even more when the veils go off, slowly, slowly, and you realize, wait a second, I need to be a just person. I can't be unfair in the tiniest of things. So you become sensitive to giving justice. You also equally become sensitive when you don't receive justice. So because it's a two-way street, when you become sensitive when you don't receive justice, then even the tiniest of things that people do, they hurt us even more. So if anything in the spiritual journey, the more goodness we want to emulate, the more we will become sensitive to the pain and the hurt. So becoming more spiritual and becoming more Zen doesn't mean that the hurt and the pain will go away. The only thing that we will see is that we will develop a skill to alchemize this pain and hurt, to use this pain and hurt in the right direction so that we can grow and we can perfect our souls in a godly manner. So we can perfect our faith, we can perfect our characteristics and emulate the character of God. Hence, the idea that, Ayatul Kursi is a resume of God. There are characteristics of God that are there, and the characteristics of God give us a two-way understanding of the names of God. One is that there is a master who's all perfect, who is perfect in these characteristics, and he is there for me. He's protecting me, he's loving me, he's the only one I want to rely on, and I don't need to fear anybody. And that helps me climb out of my fearful state, alchemize my pain, get rid of my insecurities. And at the same time, the names of God, when emulated within me, change me as well, help me become a better godly person as well, so that I can transmute pain and hurt, because I can change love with hate. I can change pain with mercy. I can change cruelty with clemency. And in that way, we transmute and transcend our pain and hurt. So I would like to conclude our session now with a prayer. Put our hands up in front of the Almighty, the All-Merciful, the All-Wise, King of the Kings. Oh Allah, we come to you with our fascinations and our inspirations and our dreams. Oh Allah, we come to you with visions that we hold for our future. And oh Allah, we come to you with broken hearts that feel disappointed, that give up, that feel hopeless, that feel dark, that feel confused, that feel lost, that feel like the darkness will last forever. Oh Allah, but is there anyone who can save us from our darkness? Is there anyone who can save us from our hopelessness? Oh Allah, there is no other power other than your light. There is no other power than your mercy and love. There is no other power than your presence. And you say, Allah waliyul ladina. Allah is the wali of those who believe. Oh Allah, is there any power who can fill our hearts with true belief? Oh Allah, we falter. We fall under pressure. Oh Allah, we give in and we give up. And oh Allah, that is our journey of constantly falling. But they say that you only fail when you give up. Oh Allah, may we never give up with your mercy and hope, oh Allah. And if we are ever at a point of giving up, oh Allah, then you please come in and with your invisible hand of love, kindness, mercy, and help, be the wali to pick us up and put us back on track. Oh Allah, help us to alchemize our pain instead of falling into the dark pits of our pain, into victimhood and blame. Oh Allah, hold us, pick us up, bring us out of our darkness into light. For truly, 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 to the core of our being, we are helpless. We try and we try and we try and we find ourselves so lost and confused, oh Allah. So is there any other door that we can knock? And Imam Sadiq says, keep knocking, keep knocking, keep knocking. One day the door will open. Oh Allah, let us never give up our hopes when we knock at your door. Is there anyone who can fulfill us? And is there anyone who returned empty-handed from you, Ya Allah? Oh Allah, may we never ever give up. May we never return empty-handed. Oh Allah, hold us from all sides, pick us up, nourish us, pamper us. Oh Allah, guide us with your love and mercy. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. Thank you everyone for joining me for this session. I would like to take any questions now or any insights. There we go. Thank you, Ghulam Uncle, for always being prompt with your input. You talked about fear. I'm just reading the message. You talked about fear. You break down the word fear, and it's actually, I'm just going to false evidence appearing real. Yeah. When you break down the word faith, it's future appearing in the heart. Wow, I had never heard that before. Thank you so much. Future appearing in the heart. The best book written about the life of the prophet is by Leslie Hazelton. I've read that book. Didn't complete it though, but yes. Her book is called Mohummud, I think. Prophet went through a lot of hardship and still he was named as #1 most influential person in the world. Yes, he was. In today's term in our life, it is said that adversity is the best university. The question now arises that if he was a role model for us, how come Muslims are so divided and there's a chaos in the Muslim world? Thank you so much for your honesty and for being open about discussing a question that runs through the minds of so many people. And I really, really welcome this discussion because we need to be real. And we need to be real for ourselves because we owe truth to ourselves, but also first and foremost for the next generation who, mashallah, they are very open to questioning, they're truth seekers, they're very relentless when it comes to, wetting out the truth. They thoroughly check and very unbiased. So how come Muslims are so divided and in chaos if he was the best leader? It's such an important question. I'm just going to finish the message and perhaps come back to this question. Alchemy of pain. It is when you struggle that you strengthen. It is when challenged to your core that we learn the depth of who we are. By Steve Marabou. Yes, alchemy of pain it is when you struggle that you strengthen. It is when challenged to your core that we learn the depth of who we are. Truly. I mean, there's so much to say about knowing ourselves because of pain. I don't know if you guys watched my interview with Noorun Nahar, a very young writer, poet in her 20s. Became a bestseller, sold millions of copies of her poetry. And she said that poetry brings out that treasure in her. Pain brings out the treasure of poetry in her. So she says that the pains in my life have come out as this book. She actually said that she performs better in expressing, in writing, in being creative. Her creativity is better when she's in pain. I don't know how far we can condone that and how far we can, I don't know how far we can condone that ideology, but that was just her truth. So let's just take it as her truth, as a very raw experience of her life. That pain brings out the best in her. And I'm not talking about staying in pain deliberately, but what I am saying is that when pain does touch us, it does bring out something which was hidden deep within us that had to come out. Now, just while I was talking about Noor, I realized that Imam Zain al-Abidin, his pain brought out all of this writing of his du'as, and it's nothing less than an extremely profound work of soul literature. It touches your soul. The words are so touching. His whispered prayers are just magical, So pain has that quality to undo ourselves, to break open, and then to bring out that which needed to come out. So thank you so much for sharing that. And it's not about, normalizing the idea that pain is good, but to understand that pain is an intrinsic part of life, and when it comes, how to deal with it. Because we all experience pain all the time in different ways. So I'm not saying go look for pain, Just like I wouldn't say, a doctor doesn't say go look for sickness, but the idea is that sickness is part of life, and a doctor just knows how to heal. And in the same way, what we're discussing today is that we're not going to go look for pain and say, oh, wow, pain is a good thing. But yeah, what we are saying is that while pain is such a normal, such an absolute part of our human experience, let's understand the value of pain in our life and how to grow through it. And going back to that question about the Holy Prophet, I feel that the Holy Prophet left a legacy. He left the way he transformed and changed the most barbaric society and brought humility, nobility, and humanity into that society and made some very, very great men out of barbarians. He did that. While the Prophet had the quality of being the greatest leader, of being the greatest teacher, of being the greatest guide, of being the greatest source of light, those who recognized him and benefited from him, they changed. Those who couldn't recognize were at a loss, and those who recognized but denied it out of their egoistic inclinations or whatever were the biggest losers. And I think that there's a big lesson there. And the lesson there is that there are a lot of, myths, a lot of sayings that go around. Like people will just say the greatest leader is one who leaves the best legacy, for example, or who unites the community and leaves. But how far is it true that we can put the responsibility of future and what the future will do with the legacy of a leader on that leader? How many leaders have we seen who were really, really great leaders, but after their passing, their nations survived chaos or kept up with that standard or kept up with that level of organization or glory? So we constantly see the fall of civilizations. We constantly see the fall of nations. We constantly see, that a particular leader was able to hold a certain nation together, and then after a while, it falls apart. Now we see a lot of civilizations on a political and external level that were doing very good. They were thriving, but there was a lot of bloodshed. There was a lot of unfair treatment. There was a lot of looting. There was a lot of control being practiced by those leaders and their children and their children and their children that were not fair treatments. So can we hold the Holy Prophet responsible for what ensued after him? And can we really hold one person responsible for the acts of so many other human beings? And if we were to do that, will we not take away from the right of free will from the human race, that they have a choice even today? Even today, we see Imran Khan in his speeches constantly talks about Riyasatul Medina, how the Prophet set up a government in Medina. I want to go back. I want to emulate that system. I want to, put that system back in its place. I mean, I don't entirely agree with his point of view, but what I do admire is that he is still inspired by what the Prophet did. He still wants to take inspiration from the legacy of the Prophet. And that's what leaders do. They leave a legacy for us to look up to and follow footsteps in, right? What people do with it is something they have to be answerable for. What people do with it is something they will have to face the consequences of. It is their free will. And therefore, if we look at the life of the Prophet, he was the gentlest, he was the most loving. He did not force religion on anybody. He gave protection rights to the Jews and the Christians and other nations. So we see that the Holy Prophet was governing in a way which was not out of control. There was no control. In fact, after the life of the Prophet, when the principles of the government, the principle of governance, the principles of the legacy of the leadership of the Prophet were abandoned, that the community went into chaos. So it is not the Prophet and what he did that led us into chaos. It is what he did which was not continued, which led us into chaos. And it's just a perspective, it's just a way of looking at it. But humanity has to come to a place where it has to start taking responsibility at every stage of its evolution for its own actions. We cannot be falling back and looking for reasons to blame someone or something else for our doing, what we are doing today, and the chaos we're causing or the environmental damage we're causing. We can, this is something that I think this blame game and fault finding is not a godly way. It is not the best of ways of dealing with the situation, because this is what I see happen in politics. You know, when a new government comes, they just blame everything that's going wrong on the past government. And they'll just say, oh, they did this bad, 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 bad. And so right now, whatever bad is happening is because of them. And now we have to clean up their mess, right? It's just not fair. It's just not the right way to move forward. And I'm so inspired by the talk I had with Mirza Hassan yesterday, that she was mentioning this, that what do we gain out of blaming people? But what we have right now is this moment of looking into future and saying, what can I do right now of my own to change whatever it is right now? And whatever we have right now is a lot of inspiration and a lot of good that we can learn from through the Holy Prophet, through these great personalities, and build a better future. So these are just my thoughts. I may be wrong. Please, write to me. My Quran Sanctuary email is active again. I went back to it after a very long time yesterday, and I found a couple of emails from Glam Uncle and a couple other people that were untouched, and I hadn't seen them. So I really, really apologize for that. But now the email is inshallah going to be active. I'm also available on WhatsApp. So whoever wants to, ask any questions or share any insights, please do so. I'm very, very grateful for the emails that came to me. There was a very, very cute handwritten note somebody had sent to me, and it put a smile on my face. So thank you so much for all your love and support. And the biggest ask I have of you is to keep me and my family in your prayers. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a lovely weekend. Until we meet next time, keep me in your prayers as you are in mine. Take care. Allah Hafiz.